This video is brought to you by Amain Hobbies. Click the links in the description below. Like I mentioned in my previous video regarding the T6.4, the first video that I did that really gained traction on my channel was the T6.2 review I did a little while ago. When I made that video, Stadium trucks seem to be making a comeback into the mainstream RC racing world at a club level. And these days, if you go to any big boy race at most RC tracks around the country, Stadium truck will usually have more entries than short course truck, the class that for a time replaced Stadium truck. Not only that, but I wanted another Stadium truck after getting to drive my friend Brock's Yokomo YZ2 Stadium truck. After that experience and seeing Stadium truck grow at my local track, the Yard, the place where the Nationals are going to be held this year, I figured now would be a good time to give it another go. Before we begin, however, I'd like to say a few things. First off, I'd like to thank you guys for checking out this video. I'd also like to remind you guys to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and be sure to subscribe as well if you're new here and want to support the channel. I'd also like to thank Amain Hobbies for supporting me as well. Anything you guys buy using the links below will directly support me as well. With all that out of the way, let's begin the video. I've built this two-wheel drive platform on both on my channel and on my own enough times to get a general idea as to how it has evolved over time. Talking strictly about the kit, I won't get too much into detail about the build as I did a separate video just on that alone. But to put it simply for the sake of this review, it was a good build. Great even. Nothing really was an issue to build, nothing really bound or caused any issues in the build itself, and for the most part the build was easy and stress-free. The only thing that kind of annoyed me, and annoyed is a strong word here, was the inclusion of a few parts specific to the buggy like shock guards and wing mounts. These will not fit the truck, nor are they needed. They are probably just included to make the packaging both this and the probably better selling buggy cheaper so they don't have to charge more for the actual truck. In summary, the build was easy, stress-free, and generally well thought out. So how about we take a look at the completed truck more in depth. This truck was released more or less as a way to update their still competitive but ultimately antiquated T6.2 platform of Stadium trucks, the same truck I reviewed a long time ago. This means it comes with all the things that the B6.4 came with as new features. Things like the revised steering components, thick boy 3.5mm turnbuckles for more durability, the new servo mounting system that bolts directly to the chassis instead of the side rails like in the original .2, and a few other things I may be forgetting off the top of my head. The arguable star of the show, though, are these. These are the new 13mm shocks that seem to be more and more popular these days as tracks become smoother and higher in grip. What these 13mm shocks are supposed to do is cause the shocks to have a lot more pack, or slowdown in English, under load, allowing the car to settle much smoother and allowing you to get on the power much quicker after, say, a jump onto a flat surface, something a lot more common on carpet and AstroTurf tracks. For reference, the bore for the previous kit shocks were 12mm. Was the extra millimeter worth it? Well, we'll have to get to that a little bit later. Now, how exactly did I outfit my truck specifically? Let's go down the list. First, for the ESC and motor combo, I went with Maclan Electronics, specifically their Mod ESC and their 7.5 turn motor. After testing and going with different ESCs from companies like Hobbywing, Trinity, and LRP, the Maclan stuff just seems to feel the best to me. Or at the very least, their default settings felt the best to me. I am already aware you can make any ESC feel the way you want to with enough testing and tuning. As for the servo, I went with my classic standby of the Savox 1258 TG. This servo has served me well for literally years at this point, and it still pulls strong and has no issues so far. For the battery, I went with another classic standby, of a Gen Zeiss 4000 mAh battery. This battery gives me plenty of juice to get over pretty much anything I need on this big track with many elevation changes and large features. As for the receiver and transponder, those are interchangeable so you don't need to worry too much about what I run for those. Just grab what works for your budget. For tires, I decided to do some experimentation with J-Concepts tires at my local track and went with some J-Concepts Aqua Ellipses sanded down slicks. Easy enough to do with proper tools and enough patience. If you wish to outfit your truck with the same equipment I did, feel free to check out the links in the description below. Like I said, anything you buy using those links will directly support me as well. As for my current setup, geometry-wise I decided to stick with the kit, but for shock oils I decided to go up a lot in the front specifically, going from the kit recommended 30 weight up to 35 weight shock oil from Associated Electronics. Other than that, the setup is box stock. One thing I will say that is negative about this truck is that it only comes with all the things to make it a dirt spec truck. Now, if you run, for example, on dirt, be it outdoor dirt or hardened clay, this isn't really an issue for you. However, if you happen to run on a track that isn't dirt, be it AstroTurf or carpet, you're going to have to invest in some extra parts to make it track ready. Adding all of this stuff up, it's usually going to be another $90 to $110 to your order. So, yeah, keep that in mind. With that being said, let's get this thing on the track. Now, normally stadium trucks are considered easier to drive than their buggy counterparts, and when available, are usually the go-to for beginners looking to get into RC racing for the first time. Well, after getting these Aquas to actually work on this track, this truck was no exception. Being much wider than a buggy, and running on much wider and larger wheels and tires, it's much easier to get into a groove with this truck than the hyper-focused nature of other buggy classes of two-wheel drive and four-wheel drive. Makes me kind of wish that two-wheel drive stadium truck was a more featured class in the RC racing world. On second thought, I guess it's already kind of happening. Steps in the right direction, I guess. Where was I? Oh yes, driving characteristics. I will also say that this truck is probably the easiest RC car to jump I have ever tested. It's very smooth and plush when coming down from large jumps, and doesn't get too out of shape when you start to push it harder than what you may be used to. This is entirely down to those new 13mm shock bodies and their ability to pack better than 12mm shocks do. I actually tested this truck against one of its rivals, the Yokomo Stadium truck, and the driver of that Yokomo, Brock Peterson, said that the T6.4 jumped and landed much smoother than the Yokomo. One negative the truck had was the fact that it had a tendency to swap ends on you in a hairpin turn if you didn't brake correctly. This could be a skill issue on my part, or perhaps these tires just don't work as well as other tires like Gumballs from Raw Speed, Silvers from J-Concepts, and S3s from Proline. However, I feel like with a different setup this could also be averted. In summary on the drivability of this truck, there isn't really much to say other than it handles very well out of the box, specifically with that different shock oil, and you don't really have to do anything fancy like drilling new holes into the pistons or running some top secret part only AE drivers are allowed to have. This is a good truck to drive right out of the box, and I highly recommend for most drivers that want a stadium truck. For durability, well, I haven't really crashed this thing very hard for the most part, at least intentionally. And I've only run this thing once so far, so I can't really say much on its long-term durability. What I can say is that with larger wheels and tires, the steering components on this truck are going to be under more strain than they are on the buggy. It's not uncommon for people to swap out the composite steering bell cranks and replace them with aluminum on their trucks for fear of them snapping under heavier loads and worse crashes. I'll be sure to note any bigger long-term problems in the description of this video should any arise. Now, if you're looking at this video length and wondering why this one is so short compared to my other videos, it's quite simple. There isn't much to really say about this truck that I didn't already say in my build video prior to this review, or in my previous T6.2 or B6.4 review. It's quite simply a good truck. End of story. Nothing too wrong with it build-wise, nothing too wrong with it driving-wise. On its own, it's pretty stout. But regarding the competition, and for the sake of this review, I have to look at said competition, starting with the X-Ray XT2, the other two-wheel drive stadium truck I was looking to buy before the T6.4 was announced. One advantage it has over the Associated is the fact that there is a standard and dirt version of the kit, unlike the Associated where it only comes as a dirt spec car. However, it costs a little bit more and the parts support isn't as good. The same could be said about the other main stadium truck out there, the Schumacher Storm. This truck came out when the Schumacher's main two-wheel drive buggy was still the LD1, so it may not be as up to date as the .4 is. However, it does come with 13mm shocks. It is a little bit cheaper than the .4. Along with that, the amount of money that would go into making this a dirt car would be much less than turning the .4 into a carpet car. Even with that being said, the part support for the Schumacher at most local tracks in the US just isn't there the same way the Associated is. If you're in the US and you want a solid stadium truck to drive, this is probably your best bet. That's all for now. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more. Also, if you have any tips, questions, or thoughts you'd like to share with me or anyone else in this topic, be sure to put them in the comment section below. Also, I'd like to thank my patrons on Patreon for supporting me and helping me continue to enjoy this hobby and sport we all love. Speaking of which, I'd like to thank my patrons Michael Williams, RC World Discord server, Casey Nix, Ben Reeves, Dame Armstrong, Joe Jenkins, Rob Bedingfield, Caden Merks, Ian Petrie, Keith McDonald, and especially Morrison Watt. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.